Thompson?
Here.
Festerson?
Here.
Jerem? Mr. President.
Here.
Do Burnett first. I don't know why.
All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation by Councilmember Burnett.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, we pray with joy and thankfulness for your mercy to us as we begin our earthly work. Amen.
City Clerk certified publication of the Daily Record on October 14th. Notice for pre-council and regular City Council meeting October 18th, 2011. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon and welcome. This Omaha City Council meeting is conducted in public and may, by law, only address the topics listed on the published agenda. The council will hear testimony but will not engage in debate of issues with the public at this meeting. During testimony, it is not appropriate to applaud or convey disapproval. These actions only detract from the formal decorum of the meeting. At this time, please turn off or mute any electronic device.
Resolutions, bonds, Ray bonds, item number 5, resolution preliminary official statement pertaining to the issuance and sale of approximately $6 million City of Omaha Public Facilities Corporation lease revenue bonds, Omaha Technology and Forestry Equipment Project Series 2011 is hereby approved.
Public hearing on agenda item number 5 begins today. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. No lights, roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
It's adopted 7-0. Zoning ordinance on final reading and planning board attachments will take items 6 through 9 together. 6 is ordinance to rezone property located southwest of 214th and Pacific Streets from AG to R2 single-family residential district, low density. A, planning board and planning department recommend approval. 7 is a resolution, the preliminary plat entitled 215 Pacific Place is hereby accepted. A, planning board and planning department recommend approval. 8 is a resolution of the plat entitled 215 Pacific Place is hereby approved. A, planning board and planning department recommend approval. 9 is subdivision agreement is hereby approved.
Public hearing on agenda items 6, 7, 8, and 9 begin now. Are there any proponents?
My name is Michael Arp. Current address is 2203 South 184th Circle, Omaha, and I'm the owner of the property, and I'm here to answer any questions if there are.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
They're passed 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7E, agenda items number 10 through 15 shall be laid over 2 weeks for publication and public hearing. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7E, agenda item number 16 shall be laid over for 2 weeks. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7E, agenda item number 17 shall be laid over 2 weeks for publication and public hearing. Liquor, item number 18, Chef's Delight Mexican Cuisine, 17520 Wright Street, Class C liquor license, new application, new location.
Public hearing on agenda item number 18 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, members of the council, my name is Sean Kelly, 7134 Pacific Street, here this afternoon on behalf of the applicant. She is present and is the manager as well, and we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes. Oh, excuse me.
Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
And Jerem passes the second time for a potential conflict of interest. It's adopted 6-0, passing. Item number 19 is Hilton Garden Inn at 1005 Dodge Street, a Class I liquor license and application, no location, and you have a request for amendment to appoint James Fabian manager.
Public hearing on agenda item number 19 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the council, my name is James Fabian, 11911 Beach Road, Plattsmouth, Nebraska. Here to answer any questions if I can help.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
The amendment? Yep.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Second.
Roll call.
Gray? Jerem? Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
It's adopted as amended 7-0. Item number 20, Cheddar Casual Cafe, 12152 L Street, a Class I liquor license, new application, new location.
Public hearing on agenda item number 20 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, Mike Kelly, 7134 Pacific. I'm here with Brian Shields, the manager, and also Pete Cola, one of the executives from Cheddar's, who I had not really heard of them, but I understand we're the 100th store in the United States, and they have a very nice facility out west. They're here if they like to stand, and if you have any questions. I really shouldn't do this because I guess these guys are somewhat of a competitor and somewhat, but they have a wonderful menu, and I want you to see it. They make everything from scratch, and it is quite impressive.
Samples, Mr. Kelly?
I'm still a competitor.
So yeah, I'm not that much of a fool. Right. But we're here for any questions. And again, I think they have a wait. I was out there last night. They have a wait. They're already open without alcohol, of course, but they're already open. And they have a wait that's quite impressive. So anyway, we welcome to Omaha, and I hope you will also support their license. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Second.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yeah.
Stothard? Thompson?
Yeah.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett? Mr. President.
Yes.
Jerem passes the second time for a potential conflict of interest. It's adopted 601 passing. Item number 21, Daba's Indian Cuisine, 2012 North 117th Street, Class I liquor license, new application, new location.
Public hearing on agenda item number 21 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, Mike Kelly, 7134 Pacific. I'm also appearing here today with this applicant, Arvind Gadaparthi, if I've got that right. And there was a license there before. He encountered some difficulty with the license due to a restriction on his wife. Also, he had a problem with a partner. Anyway, that license closed. He's coming back for a new license. There has been a license there before. Now, he's not a citizen yet. He's applied for citizenship. He should be a citizen, and he tells me in 2 to 3 months. He did get a manager. The manager apparently didn't get, there was a mix-up in communication, is not here today. So I know the manager had a couple issues on there that might cause you for some concern. They're not disqualifying measures. I don't know however you want to handle it. If you want to do him in person, we obviously could lay it over, or we could attempt to answer any questions. He's probably not going to be a long-termer there because he won't be needed anymore once Arvind is a citizen. But it's Indian cuisine. It's a family restaurant. They've had a license before, had no other difficulties. But we're here for questions, should you have any.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Just Stothard.
Thanks. Mr. Kelly, I was going to ask for Shane Gish to come forward, but since he isn't here, I do have some concerns about his criminal history, and one was last year.
Now, I understand that, and I thought he was going to be here. We just had a miscommunication in my office, so apologize for that.
It's up to the council, but I would feel much better if we could lay this over at least a week and get Mr. Gish here, that we could ask him a few questions.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Sure. And that's fine with us.
Okay.
No further lights. Roll call.
1 week.
Yeah, don't want to be nice.
1 week.
Do you want to continue the public hearing? I don't think you're going to You can ask questions without that.
I don't think we need to.
I don't think we need to.
We'll have them here for you.
Just 1 week. Okay.
So do we?
Roll call.
Yeah, roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
And Jerem passes the second time. No continuation. Item number 22. Tomato, 2634 South 156th Circle. Package liquor license, no application, O location.
Public hearing on agenda item number 22 begins now. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Adopted 7-0. Item number 23, Voodoo Lounge, 304 North 168th Circle, a catering liquor license, no application, O location. They currently hold a Class C license.
Public hearing on agenda item number 23 begins now. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson? Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Adopted 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause an item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from consent agenda shall be taken up by City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed as otherwise provided by City Council rules of order. On the ordinances, we're removing item number 27.
Public hearing on agenda items number 24, 25, 26, and 28 were held on October the 4th, 2011.
Motion to approve, second.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard? Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
They're all passed 7-0. And we'll take up 27 now. 27, ordinance approving an acceptance of the City of Omaha, Douglas County Juvenile Accountabilities Block Grant funding for criminal justice information. We have an amendment.
Second.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard? Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Second.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard? Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson? Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Passed as amended 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items number 29 through 49 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or opponent. Public hearing is closed.
Motion to approve.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard? Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
They're all adopted 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7F, agenda item number 50 should be laid over 3 weeks for publication and public hearing. Ordinance on final reading, item number 51, ordinance approving the administrative services agreement between the city and Coventry Healthcare of Nebraska Incorporated for the provisions of administrative services, the Omaha Self-Insured Health Program. A is an amendment, B and C are communications.
Public hearing on agenda item number 51 was held on October the 4th.
Motion to remove the amendment A.
Need a second.
Is that appropriate?
Yes, that's right. That's correct.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard? Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
As amended.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard? Thompson?
I'm gonna vote no, even though they're the lowest, they're up to the best.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
It's passed 6-1. Pursuant to City Council Rule 70, the public hearing on agenda items 52 to 54 shall be held on the third reading. Items 55 and 56 are ordinances to amend Chapter 43 and 48. The public hearing will be held on third reading as per City Council motion. Item 57, ordinance approving an agreement between the City of Omaha and Omaha Housing Authority to provide fueling, maintenance, and repair services for OHA vehicles.
Public hearing on agenda item number 57 begins now. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item number 58, ordinance to amend sections 22-23, updating the earnings code in the definitions of compensation.
Public hearing on agenda item number 58 begins now. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item number 59, ordinance to amend section 23-177 concerning employment classifications by adding the employment classification entitled Permit Technician.
Public hearing on agenda item number 59 begins now. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item number 60, ordinance to amend section 34, 332, and 36-179 to clarify the requirements for removal of sidewalks of snow or ice and other obstructions, and to revise the fees for unlawful parking during a snow emergency.
Public hearing on agenda item number 60 begins now. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item number 61, ordinance to amend Chapter 20 entitled Offenses by amending the firearms registration.
Public hearing on agenda item number 61 begins now. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents?
Come on.
Hi, my name's Don Short. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and I would be affected by this as a potential registrant and as a firearms dealer. As currently set up, the Omaha registration requirements are redundant to state, federal, and other laws that could be used to pursue criminal activities. It takes approximately 1 hour to an hour and a half for each person to take the time out of their day to come down and register a firearm. That's a lot of waste when it's already covered by the state law, when it's already covered by federal law. It's a duplication. You have to charge them $10. It takes up time on city resources. At one time, it was used as a means to hopefully detain and arrest criminals, but it doesn't really do that. I have not had one person rejected or denied an approval for a handgun purchase through my firearm sales, nor have I heard of any that are rejected. We call the NICS background for firearms purchases. They're very thorough and quite accurate. They do catch people on that. Try targeting the possession of stolen or illegally possessed guns from the criminal element rather than the people that are owning them and purchasing them legally. What you're doing is creating more problems by even having this amendment and making the changes you're trying to make to it. That's it.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you, Mr. President and members of the council. My name is Scott Lautenbaugh. I'm a citizen of Omaha, and I represent District 18 in the legislature. I could not come up and say that I was in support of the ordinance as written. There are some concerns. I believe at one point it references concealed carry permits that are authorized by the state. It is unclear, since we also have reciprocity with other states, whether or not that would be covered or whether that would be another contravention of state law. And this is something, as you know, we've struggled with in the legislature. And I've pointed out many times that we're all in favor of local control unless we're not. And it seems to come and go with various issues. I have a bill pending currently that would deal with an issue we've been having where it is apparently almost impossible to get a gun back from the police department without an actual order of replevin, which you get at the end of a replevin lawsuit. I encountered this not in my professional or personal capacity, but as an attorney, I should say not senatorial, but in professional capacity, representing a gentleman who was ticketed for discharging an air rifle behind my church. And the air rifle was confiscated. I eventually pled him to disturbing the peace or something. He was hunting rabbits down in the ditch in daylight, but it alarmed one of the neighbors. Fine. The prosecutor's office was very helpful, said, yes, we'll do a letter saying you can have your gun back. I then followed up with the police department, and I did not say this is Senator Lautenbaugh calling. I said, this is Scott Lautenbaugh. I'm an attorney representing so-and-so. There is no more prosecution. He pled to disturbing the peace. We'd like to get the air rifle back. And what I was told was, no, we don't give guns back. You have to go to court and get an order of replevin, which generally means hiring an attorney and spending a few $1,000s, in this case, to get a $150 air rifle back. So my client didn't do that. But the practical effect of that is there's now a bill in the hopper in Lincoln that says that if you have to file a replevin, you get attorney's fees for, if you're successful, to get your gun back, and statutory damages, if I can't remember if it's $1,000 or $10,000. But either way, I remember reading somewhere that the city isn't remarkably flush these days, and I can't imagine that you want to be spending money in that way. That dovetails with the lawsuit that's currently on file as well on a different issue, still related to guns, and I applaud your attempt to address this. But I would also urge you to address it fully and completely and carefully, because we are running into problems both, well, in all the areas I just discussed, and it should not be something where every year we stand up in the legislature and say, City of Omaha, why are you doing this? You must do something different. I applaud you for looking into this, and I hope you can deal with it to the both compliance with state law and to the satisfaction of those who are litigating it at this point. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other opponents?
I am Andy Allen. I'm president of the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association and a citizen of the City of Omaha. I'm going to skip over all the political positioning and go directly into talking about this proposed ordinance. We'll start at section 1. The change is adding, unless the person carrying the weapon has a valid permit issued by the state of Nebraska under the Concealed Handgun Permit Act for carrying of weapons. At first you'd think that that sounds good, but then we go back, that was actually already done 4 years ago by the council. If you look at section B in the exceptions, item 10 says already gives for people that have a state recognized concealed firearm permit. The next issue is it says valid permit issued by the state of Nebraska. In our concealed carry statute, we recognize several other states' permits. They're permits that were not issued by the state of Nebraska. The state preemption covers them. You do not have the ability to take and say you can't carry a firearm here. We have the same issue when we come to section 2. It's required to register. Those persons they use the exact same language, and you do not have the ability to say that person from Iowa with the state recognized concealed carry permit has to register in Omaha. It's been preempted by the state. Then we move into the meat of the bill. Section 3, which talks about the application for registration. We've heard that this is supposed to be a relaxation of the laws here in the state or in the city, and I don't see where there's anything here that's relaxing. We're moving, saying that somebody has had a violation of the city ordinance. We're going from 5 years to 10 years that they're going to be banned from having the ability to register a firearm. We're adding more misdemeanors to the list of who can never register a firearm. That's something I'd recommend being very careful on. Right now there are federal lawsuits over this exact issue going on the East Coast. We also hit where we raised the city's gun tax by 50%. Then we hit the nice sentence dealing with our lawsuit. If you read what's written there, striking out the stricken text, it says, is an alien not lawfully admitted under a non-immigrant visa illegal alien. It's kind of hard to read, kind of ambiguous. The illegal alien at the end, you think, kind of clarifies that a little bit. But the reason why it's so hard to read is it breaks basic elementary grammar. That sentence has a double negative in it. The courts do the same thing with the law with a double negative that your 5th grade teacher would. They take both of the negatives out of the sentence and read the sentence again to see what it says. We do that, the sentence says, is an alien lawfully admitted under an immigrant visa, illegal alien. Now, I have no idea what illegal aliens have to do with immigrants lawfully admitted, but that's what the sentence says. It does not affect our lawsuit. And I'm perfectly fine if you get these ordinances straightened out so that our lawsuit goes away. What we want to do is work with you to fix these ordinances. And we haven't been able to do that in the past. I'm going to address the voluntary registration just briefly. I have no real problem with a voluntary registration. I think that there are benefits to registering the firearm with the city. First of all, I see for the city, there's some benefit just in the fact that if the firearm is registered with the city, they have their own database. They can go quickly look up who the owner was. It saves time and money. If we have a stolen firearm or whatever, we need to track down the owner. But that is the person's choice there. Unfortunately, by creating a voluntary registration for one group of people and having another registration where people must pay $15 to register a firearm, we now all of a sudden are sitting, we've got two classes of people. We got people that we're giving something away for free to, and we've got another group of people that we're charging and requiring them to pay those fees. That breaks all ideals of fairness. I mean, our state motto here is equality under the law. Where is there any, or correction, equality before the law? Where is there any sense of equality in doing that? So I'm going to make a couple of recommendations for the council to consider. First of all, let's take a look at a couple of the ordinances that are on the books that this has not addressed. Let's take a look first in Division 1, right in the first section, where it talks about definitions. The city defines a concealable firearm as a firearm that has a barrel less than 18 inches in length. Now, that would include many common sporting rifles. There's a lot of rifles out there that have 16-inch barrels. You take that rifle down to the police station to try to register it. They will tell you, no, that's not what we want to register. We're out to register handguns. The correct definition that we should be using there, so that we match with what every other state, the state of Nebraska, and the federal government talks about, what they're trying to register is firearms with a barrel less than 16 inches and able to be fired with one hand or operated with one hand. The next is a piece that's a leftover hanger in the city ordinances. Many years ago, before the state had any type of purchase permit requirement, before we had the Brady bill at the federal level, the city of Omaha had a purchase permit requirement. That requirement required anybody that wanted to purchase a concealable firearm to get a permit from the chief of police. And it gave further in the statutes what had to be done to be able to get that permit. since the state has developed its handgun purchase permit, the city has removed those requirements from the ordinances. But still, Section 20-200 is sitting here in Division 1. And it says it shall be unlawful for any person to sell or rent a concealable firearm to any person who has not obtained a written permit from the chief of police as provided for in this article. So according to that ordinance, nobody can purchase a concealable firearm in the city of Omaha because we have nothing in the statutes that tell how to get said permit from the chief of police. There's nothing in the ordinances that say that he has to give such a permit for particular people. It's a piece that's hanging on, not being enforced. If we are doing what the actual purpose of this bill is, and I'm going to make the city ordinances consistent with state and federal laws, we should be clearing those types of things out. I'd also recommend, just in fairness to all people, let's make the voluntary registration for everybody. Anybody that can legally own and purchase a firearm in the state of Nebraska under state and federal laws has the ability to register that firearm with the city. Now, if you want to charge a $5 charge, $10 charge, $15 charge, make it free to encourage more people to register their firearms, I say I recognize there are benefits to having done so, and I would point those out to anybody that ever questions that. You know, your firearm is stolen. One of the things you have to do to be able to get it back is you have to prove ownership. If you've registered it with the city, that acts as proof of ownership. So there are benefits to registering. So I'm not going to stand here and say get rid of registration, but we need to develop a system that recognizes everybody's right to be able to defend themselves and own the tools to defend themselves. At the same time, be fair to all of our citizens. And I thank you for giving us this time today to be able to discuss these issues. And I'll take any questions anybody may have.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Rod Moeller. I'm a citizen of Omaha. I own a gun shop in La Vista. It's in La Vista for a reason. Everybody that comes into my shop tells me how much they despise the registration process. They don't have to go through that process if they go through me or any of the other dealers that are outside of Omaha city limits. It is completely up to them to register at their convenience at the Omaha Police Department and not at the time of purchase. There's no reason to go through that extra level of inconvenience. Now, most of the people I have as customers do go through the registration process because they do want to comply with the law. But they do not like to be forced to register it after they pay for it and go through all the paperwork but before they take possession. You don't have to do it with your car or anything else. It's just a horrible inconvenience. I would say the one thing that the City of Omaha has done an excellent job of is driving revenue out of the City of Omaha, because there's very few gun dealers in Omaha. There are some, but not very many. Most of them are in La Vista, and I would say the City of La Vista is very thankful for all the revenue that you've driven that way. They generate far more revenue in the sales tax they collect for handgun sales than what you guys are making in the way of $10 or now proposed $15 handgun registration fee. As a City of Omaha resident, I really don't like the idea that you try to find ways to push revenue out. I would think we'd want to bring revenue in. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Harold Raymond. I live in Dundee. You may not be very interested in what I have to say, but I would have to ask you several questions, and I don't know that I'll ever get answers. But in 1996, I formed Citizens Against Corrupt Law Enforcement here in Omaha. I would spend about the next 8 years investigating police and government corruption. I got out of it in 2004 because I could no longer stomach what was done in this city. I reached a decision during those days that I would never grovel in front of a judge or in front of an officer or in front of the city council to exercise rights that God himself gave to me. You know, you want people to register their weapons. And as the gentleman said, there are some very good points to registering weapons. And I will definitely concur with that. There's also some very dangerous points with that. In the state of Nebraska, if I have the manufacturer's statement of origin, a certified copy of it in my possession, I can drive my truck anywhere I want to in this city with no license and no tags on that vehicle. And an officer can't touch me. But if I turn that MSO in for a copy of a title, now the state apparently owns my vehicle because now I'm required by law to put a tag on it and to have insurance on it and to have a license when I drive that. Ernie Cooper, I believe, sufficiently proved that down in Sarpy County. If you guys want to do something for the city, why don't you restore the Second Amendment, or at least create some clarity there? There's so many laws on the books, you can't walk down the street in good conscience, whether you're carrying a gun or not. If you want to do something for us, then let's get rid of some of these ridiculous laws. You want to change laws that are unconstitutional according to the 9th and 10th Amendment to the Constitution because they're ex post facto laws. They're bills of attainder. They are barred by both of those amendments. And you want to change laws that were created by fiat that you have no jurisdiction with which to do? You know, there's some people in this council that I have some respect for, like Mr. Thompson and Chris. The rest of y'all I don't know. I think I've seen Tom a few times. But you know, you want to do something for this city, and come together and let's work together and let's make it a better city. Let's get rid of some of these ridiculous laws that there's no jurisdiction for anybody to write. You know, I presented this position to some people once before. They accused me of wanting us to go back to Dodge City. I said, no, if that's what you think, then you've watched too much television. It didn't happen that way. I've been to Dodge City. I've studied history for years. I would ask you all to do something righteous for the people in the street. Just like in Nazi Germany, they would call me a Jew because I have a patch here that says felon on it. From what, 30 years ago? And you guys would assassinate my character over that? Tell me I can't carry a gun? My crime had nothing to do with a gun? 30 years ago, and I haven't been in trouble since. And yet, I'm getting ostracized? For what? For what? I know people that are gangbangers. I feel more at ease around that carry guns than I do any officer at OPD. Well, except a couple of them. So you want to do something right for us? Let's get rid of some of these laws. Let's do something right for the people. Let's give some freedom back to the people. Let them breathe a little bit more. Anymore in the city, you can't even look in the mirror without getting nervous if you see a cop behind you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to come down here and share this with you. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Robert McCormick. I'm a resident of Omaha, Nebraska. I just wanted to say I support what Andy and Rod both said. And a common sense approach to me is if you have a permit from the state which involves the NICS background check by the FBI based on the Brady bill, why can't you just take that down and register a handgun rather than having a redundancy in the background investigation? If you have a concealed carry permit or a state permit, which is only valid for a couple of years, you go down, you register, you take that down, you give them the serial number, you register your gun. It's just paperwork. They don't have to do a background check. If someone doesn't have that and wants to purchase a gun and register it, then the city could do the background check. That's pretty basic common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents?
My name is Wesley Dickinson. Thank you, President. I recently moved to Nebraska.
And your address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I live in Sarpy County. recently moved to Nebraska 2 years ago, and when my wife and I were looking for a house, we weighed the laws and taxes of a number of the areas here on the eastern part of the state. The gun tax in Omaha was one of the reasons that we chose to purchase our property in Sarpy County. So continuing along the lines of the economic argument that the gentleman that owns the firearms store made, that meant that we purchased the house down there. The revenue went to Sarpy. Any of the tax money goes to Sarpy. Our shopping for groceries and whatnot goes to Sarpy. I think that this mandatory gun tax in Omaha is driving people outside of Omaha, especially when you look at the growth that Sarpy County has seen over the last 10 to 15 years. So I'd ask you to consider perhaps what Andy was talking about with perhaps making it a voluntary registration for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents?
My name is Austin Peterson. I'm a Sarpy County resident. Thank you for your time, first and foremost. A few years ago, I moved out of Nebraska. I went to Illinois. I attended law school. I graduated. I came back to Nebraska because I want to work here and I want to live here. But more and more I'm thinking about it, and I might just go live in Iowa, try to get a job in Nebraska, in Omaha, you know. But I wanted to express to the committee that I don't feel that you'll attract people from places like New York and Chicago and Los Angeles with extremely liberal style restrictive gun laws, but I do think that you risk driving some people out of Omaha, such as myself. I'd like to contribute to this community economically, but I'm no longer sure that I'd want to make my home here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents?
I'm Wilson Metz. I'm an Ashland resident. I have 2 handguns registered here in Omaha. I bought one of my guns at Guns Unlimited, and that was the last time I bought in Douglas County. I go to Rod now in Sarpy County or Cabela's, but I just don't like having my guns registered in Omaha when I'm not even a Douglas County or Omaha resident. So financially, that's a problem for you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents? Public hearing is closed. Ms. Stother.
Thank you. Could City Attorney Michelle Peters come forward, please?
Michelle Peters, Assistant City Attorney.
Thank you. And I'm going to give you a moment to tell or to state your reasoning behind what we did with this. But I did want to clarify a couple things first. I think there's a little bit of confusion about the concealed carry permit with the state. With the changes that are in this ordinance, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't it mean that if you have a concealed carry permit with the state, then you do not have to register your gun in Omaha? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And there was some confusion some years ago. That change was specifically made in the legislature. I think Senator Lautenbach spoke to that. This ordinance further clarifies that just to make that more clear. So that is correct that some of these folks feel that there's some duplicity there, and that is indeed the case, that if you have a permit for concealed carry with the state and you've gone through the background checks and you've gone through the training and so forth, you do not have to register with the City of Omaha. We would love you to voluntarily,
right,
but it's not required.
Okay. But then, again, what you are saying that is still left in this ordinance is if you have any other kind of gun that you do not want to carry concealed, you have it in your home. What this still leaves is that you indeed do have to register it still.
Right. And it's, again, yes, the concealables. So as it stands now, the police department has determined if it has, again, that was correctly stated, if it's an 18-inch barrel or shorter, then it's viewed as concealable under our ordinances.
Okay, but if you have shotguns at home?
No, those don't have to be registered. Again, you may voluntarily register what they call long guns, but those are not required to be registered. Anything with a 18-inch barrel or shorter is considered concealable. It must be registered. Anything longer than that, shotguns, something that you can't hide in your coat, does not have to be registered. Mandatory registration.
I understand that now. Okay, now with what Senator Lautenbach was talking about, though, could you speak a little to that? Because he's not here anymore, is he?
He I think, was talking about the replevin statute.
And he was talking about that I think what I understood him saying is that he feels like the state's law is much broader because it has reciprocity to other states. And how would that apply then to what this ordinance addresses?
Lieutenant Colleen Hinchy from the Omaha Police Department is also here, and I would ask her to come up because I believe in our discussions that issue came up about the reciprocity with other states.
As long as they're on file with the Colleen Hinchy, sorry, Lieutenant Colleen Hinchy, Omaha Police Department. As long as they're on file with the state, I believe that they will show up in our IMS system that have a gun registration across the state. If it would show up on their driver's license, it wouldn't be an issue. And if they provide proof, it wouldn't be an issue as far as going over across state lines.
Okay. Now, I'll ask.
And I believe that we've been working on this ordinance change. I know everyone thinks that this was a knee-jerk reaction to the lawsuit. We've actually been working on this since April or May. And I believe it was in our discussions that we considered reciprocity because Nebraska does have that. So I think we just left it under the state, believing that reciprocity would show up when there was a background check done. So if there needs to be, further clarification, I believe that's something that we would be happy to do because I believe that is the law. And so if that's something that would clarify the issue, just to show that if they have a valid permit issued in this state or in another state in which Nebraska has reciprocity, that amendment can probably easily be made.
Now, I don't understand this, but you can explain it to me. Maybe you both can. But the two gentlemen that own the gun stores, there's a purchase permit requirement?
Yes, and the county is the one who issues that.
So when you go to purchase a gun at a gun store, you have to go through a background check and they take all your personal information and everything. So isn't that considered registering your gun?
No. There are occasions where you do not have to get a purchase permit if you're given a gun by a family member. So not all guns that are given require a permit of purchase. But when you go into a dealership, you are required to have a permit purchase to do that. And that's given by the state. The registration of the handgun is specifically with the city. So if you live in the county, you do not have to register a handgun in the city unless you purchase it within the city, because some handgun shops require that you have the purchase permit and the registration before they can leave the shop with the gun.
Okay. And I'll ask you, Officer, what do you see as the benefits as far as law enforcement of registering your gun with the city?
Well, just like the gentleman pointed out, if it was to become stolen out of your house, we can very much track it very easily, because a lot of people don't even know their gun's missing at times, and we'll find it on the street and we call them and say, do you know your gun's missing? They're like, no, I didn't even know it was gone. So then that way we can get that gun back to their owner, the proper owner. And usually if they're a victim of a theft or a crime, you do not need the writ of replevin to get their gun back if you're the victim. Now, if the gun was taken in a criminal manner, then that's a different issue. But usually victims do not require a writ of replevin to get their gun back. So the registration not only helps in the tracking of crimes and solving cases, but it also helps the victims get their property back.
And you don't see that, obviously we all know that good law-abiding citizens their guns are, well, unless they're stolen, I guess, are not used in crimes, that criminals aren't going to go register their guns or pay a fee. Why not just say all registration could be voluntary?
Well, I think the reason why we did that, we kept the fee for those that aren't, because they can very well waive our fee if they just go take that CCW class. Those people had already paid a fee, and that's why we kind of made that voluntary issue for them. But those that don't take that extra step for that CCW, it does require us to do processing and checking, and there is an administrative end to us as the police department, and so that's why we kept that fee there. But when you go to the state level, they just bring in and have proof of their CCW carry permit. We run them, it's on their driver's license record, and that's all they're required. So that's why that one's voluntary and no fee, and the other one has a slight administrative fee attached to it.
Do we have data that supports that registering your gun that guns that are used in crimes, that registering your gun, you have data that somehow that helps?
That I would not be aware of at this time. We have statistics as far as the criminal or crime reports and things like that, but as far as my front desk people who I'm in charge of, I wouldn't have access to that data.
So let me put it another way. Do you have any data that guns that are used in crime in Omaha, with gun gang violence or whatever, that a lot of those guns come from law-abiding citizens that have registered their guns with the city of Omaha?
Again, that would be out of my scope, and I wouldn't want to comment on that. Okay. That wouldn't be in that area of expertise.
Okay. Well, Michelle, I'll ask you just a little bit more. Did you want to say anything else about your intent when you amended this ordinance?
Well, again, we've been working on this for several months, and I think the intent was always not to make the laws more restrictive or less restrictive, but to be in line with the state and federal laws. That was mainly our concern. We looked a lot at the mental health requirements, the case law that has come down on that. We wanted to be in compliance with that law. We wanted to be consistent with the state law with regard to how many years you go back to look at misdemeanors and so forth, because there were a number of permits that were originally denied by the police department that came in front of the Administrative Board of Review and got overturned. So there was some inconsistency, and we wanted everything to be consistent. We wanted it to be more user-friendly for the constituents that were coming here and applying, and we just needed basically an overhaul to update it and put it in line with state law.
Could you answer the one gentleman that was speaking, talked about the statement about an alien not lawfully admitted under a non-immigrant visa, about the double negatives not meaning that this statement wasn't clear?
Well, I think it's clear. We've actually gone through several revisions on that. It is a little bit awkward, I will admit that, but the way that section is set up, it's set up in that way. I don't think it's a double negative. I think he's looking at the non-immigrant visa as being a double negative. I don't read it in that manner. But again, that is something that we can work on to try to make it more clear if that's necessary. I don't think it's unconstitutional or would be viewed to be as unconstitutional by a court of law as it's currently written. But if it can be clarified in some way, we can certainly work on making it clear.
Okay.
Because that's the intent. We want it to be clear for the citizens of Omaha who come and register their guns, and we certainly want to encourage that.
Okay. Did I see Chief Hayes walk in? Maybe I could ask him. Thanks. Hey, Chief.
Good evening. It's Chief Alex Hayes, Police Chief for the City of Omaha.
I wanted to ask you the question about, do you have data that guns that are used in crime come from law-abiding citizens that have registered their guns with the City of Omaha?
I think as far as particular stats to say it's one way or the other, I can't say that, Gene. I know from past experience, I know I can think of homicide cases that we have cleared because a gun was registered. And it was registered to a law-abiding citizen who actually accidentally shot themselves. A relative later on down the line, we believe, was involved in a murder. And the type of weapon that was used was one that they had a prior registration on, and we were able to track it that way. We run into them all the time where we're removing them off younger kids who are involved in gang activity, and the prima facie charge that we have on them at the time would be the non-registered firearm. They shouldn't have the gun in their possession. Some of them are older, 21, 22 years old, but they're involved in illegal type activity. It may not necessarily be a CCW level of an offense where it fits a state statute or another city ordinance. And we do have a lot of guns that we are able to return to citizens in town based just on that registration. I think there is a misinformation out in society that there is some kind of national gun database where you can instantly run a serial number on a gun, look at the make and model, and tell who the owner is and who actually purchased it, and that does not exist. And this is a way for us a better tool for us to be able to give those back to the people who actually own them, and then a lot of times inform them that their firearm's missing. There's a burglary at a house or whatever the case may be, and the gun disappears, and we don't have any way to trace that through a serial number in use unless it has been entered in NCIC. If they didn't know what was missing at the time, they've just got no knowledge of it, therefore we would have no knowledge of it. You have a lot of people that invite, they have children who invite kids over to the house. The kids think it's neat, they'll end up stealing the gun from the house. Nobody knows it's gone until we find it on the street. I mean, we have lots of those incidences going on.
Can you just give us your general opinion of this ordinance in its amended form? And then the one thing I do want you to address, though, is the fee. Why is there a fee?
Okay. The original ordinance had a fee in it. We internally are looking at all of our fees to see if they are up to standards. A lot of those fees haven't been changed in decades. We have employees that are making more money than they've made in the past, and all we're trying to do is recoup the cost of the actual paperwork it takes to go through it. To answer the fee question, the intent of changing this was when this first came up, there was a ruling by John Bruning, and it had to do with the CCW permit to carry and whether we had the right or not to issue or to require somebody to register a firearm if they had a CCW permit. What a CCW permit allows you to do in the state is carry any concealable firearm that you would have. So if you own it, you can carry it. It's not specific to a particular weapon. It's kind of an open-ended thing. Bruning's ruling indicated that we were in the wrong for having people register a firearm if they had a CCW permit. We changed the practice, but the ordinance still existed, and that's kind of how this began. As we went through that process, we went down the line to make sure everything in that ordinance was up to date, and as Michelle indicated, some of those things that were going on with mental health and that changed as it went along. Looking at the ordinance, I actually noticed the thing about the non-resident alien in the ordinance, and I said, I don't think this complies with the law. Check the federal statutes, which we did, and tried to bring that up to date, and that's based on what the federal statute says. So what we tried to do was just really clean up the ordinance and get it up to date, and we're doing that with a couple of other things that we see on the books that we think need to be brought up to date. The taxi cab registration is one of them. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's all.
Chief?
Yes.
I've got a question for you. To your point that there is no national registry for firearms or handguns.
Right.
Let's just talk about that for a minute. If I want to buy any kind of a weapon in Douglas County, what's the first step in the process? I go to the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, correct?
And you have a background check ran on you to make sure that you're eligible to purchase a firearm. Then once you get your permit, you go out to whatever store it is or wherever, whether it be a trade show, Shields, Saul's, a local gun shop, Guns Unlimited, anywhere, to purchase that weapon. You show them your permit, and you're allowed to purchase that weapon. If it's in the city limits of Omaha, and you purchase a weapon, they require you to have it registered prior to them being able to sell it to you. So you'd have to get an actual registration.
Any type of weapon, whether it's a
no,
shotgun?
it would be a handgun, only a handgun registration
Okay.
permit. And then you would be able to take possession of that weapon.
So if I'm buying a shotgun, and I've just got this, it's not a permit, but what do you get from Douglas County? It's just
it's a permit to purchase.
Permit to purchase, okay. So if I buy a shotgun, then I buy the gun and...
Take it home and go hunting with it or whatever, yep.
So there's no... The gun shop owner then, they make no record?
No, they would have paperwork and record of you purchasing it from them. They would send that into the federal government, but they don't track the weapon. As far as owning that type of weapon, if I were to run that serial number nationally, the only national database I can really check is the National Crime Information Center, or NCIC, to see if you get a stolen report on it, or it was reported actually stolen by you. That's the only way to check that. I can't...
Okay. So there's no connection then between that?
No, if I find the gun and I run it and it's not entered as a stolen weapon, I come back with no hit. There's no way for me to do that. I can attempt to trace it back to the owner through AT&F, where they come in, they fill out paperwork, they send it off to a center. They'll run a bunch of things. They can tell you the manufacturer, where it was made, who had it next, and who had it next. But you took it and you sold it to a cousin or, I don't know, a friend of yours or whatever. They like say it's a Browning shotgun or whatever, and they like it and wanted to use it for hunting. You made no record of that sell to somebody else, and you're allowed to do that as a private individual. There's no way for us to trace that back to the owner if we were to recover it in a theft.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Stothard, did you have another question? No. No, I'm sorry, sir. The public hearing is closed.
Even on a rebuttal basis?
No, there's no rebuttal.
There were some things said that weren't quite right.
Were you a proponent or opponent? Opponent. No, only for proponents. I'm sorry.
Next item.
Mr. Clerk.
Pursuant to City Council Rule 70, the public hearing on agenda items 62 through 64 shall be held on the third reading. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7C, the public hearing on agenda items 65 through 74 shall be held on the second reading.
Motion to adjourn. Or go into executive session for purpose of labor negotiation.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard? Thompson? Festerson? Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes. The City Council is going into executive session for the purpose of discussing labor negotiations only.
303. 24, actually.
Motion to come out of executive session. Second.
We have a motion to come out of executive session, Mr. President. And a second?
I've got to read this first, right?
No, do the roll call and you can read it after
Okay,
that.
roll call.
Gray?
Yes, sir.
Jerem?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson? Gurnett? Mr. President?
Yes. We are coming out of executive session, which we only discussed labor negotiations.
Motion adjourned.
Roll call.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Stothard?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
24. No, 25.
Yeah. It's not